Good morning and welcome to Coffee with the Pastor. We're in Mark chapter 10. This is the chapter that's recording events that happened on the way to Jerusalem. Jesus and his disciples have left Galilee. They're taking a very familiar route. They've went down by the Sea of Galilee towards the Jordan River. They're going right beside the Jordan River all the way down up to Jericho, and then they'll be going up towards Jerusalem. Very familiar route for the people from Galilee to go to Jerusalem. It was a common route. Jesus has stopped to preach. He stopped to teach. He has been approached by a rich young ruler. He has pulled his disciples aside and told them what's going to happen. I mean, he just tells them exactly what's going to happen, that he's going to be turned over by the Jewish authorities to the Gentiles or the Romans, and that they're going to misuse him and crucify him, but then he's going to rise from the dead. They don't get it. And then today, along the way, James and John are going to make a request. This isn't going to be the first time, but let's just look and see what happens. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want me to do for you, he asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with? We can, they answered. And Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their higher officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. On the way, James and John come up to Jesus and they say, we have a request of you. Jesus says, what is it? He says, well, one of us wants to sit on your right, one on your left when you come into your glory, when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus says, can you do the things I'm going to do? Are you going to be able to take it? Are you going to take the baptism? And they said, we can. And Jesus said, you're right. You're going to do that. But then he said, it's not for me to give that place. He said, God's prepared some people for that. And then he goes on to say, this is not the way you do things. And he said, you're wanting to do things like the Gentiles, who being an authority, exercising authority over people is something to be thought of. He says, in my kingdom, those that are great are servants. Those that will wait till last are the best. And he says, you've got to be serving all. And he says, I came to serve, not to be served. And then he ends it with that, and I desire to give my life as a ransom for many. In other words, I'm going to lay down my life for everyone. He's talking about the cross. And one of the things that I think is interesting is to note that Jesus just says this is not the attitude we're to have if you're part of the kingdom of God. I once heard somebody say that, you can accomplish a lot if you don't care who gets the credit. And I have seen it. I mean, obviously we see it in society, in business, politics. We even see it in the church where people want credit for everything that they do, or they want to be honored. They want to be recognized. I think that's a very natural thing, but I think if you're really after serving, if you're really after accomplishing a mission, it won't matter who's recognized. The big thing is that God's glorified and the task is done. And Jesus is teaching his disciples that. And I find it interesting, though, that Jesus says, you will be baptized with the same fire that I'm going to be. James was the first apostle that was martyred. And not long after the Pentecost, he was teaching apparently in the temple courts about Jesus, where Jesus taught, and apparently where a lot of teaching went on. And the religious leaders got so mad at him, and of course, he'd been arrested and told not to speak anymore. But they threw him, history records that he was thrown off the pinnacle of the temple, and I've been there. It's a long ways down. And they literally were so mad at him, they went and threw him off. And apparently he wasn't dead, but then they beat him until he was dead when he down there, because they had thrown him off. So he suffered that. John was the only disciple who actually died a natural death, but it wasn't because he wasn't persecuted and tortured. They tried to kill him, and they threw him in a vat of boiling oil, and he survived. And Roman law says that if you survive an assassination attempt, then they can't do it again. And then he was exiled to Patmos. I've been to Patmos, and where he was exiled, and so he had his share too of very difficult times and sufferings for Jesus as well. But today, I would just encourage you, as you serve Jesus, as you serve other people, not to worry about getting any credit for it. I remember going to Wichita for a discipleship conference with James Bryan Smith, and it had just snowed the week before, and he talked about how that there were 3 single ladies on his street, and he just took it upon himself to go clean off their driveways. And he said, I found myself all day waiting for calls of thank you. He said, I got one. And but then he realized that was his wrong motivation. We need to just do things not expecting anything in return, and just doing things for the Lord, nothing else. And I think that would be a great way to live. And I think that a lot can be accomplished if you don't care who gets the credit. Well, we'll get to Jericho tomorrow. And then next week we'll be getting into Passion Week from Mark. I'm enjoying these studies, and I hope you are. And I'll see you tomorrow. Blessings upon you.